performing well, those best practices can be learned from and transferred, as we should be able to learn from best practices in public school settings and learn from. The goal of this hearing is to address the moratorium so that we, as members of this task force, members of the National Board of Directors, can better learn from what's taking place and issue a report consistent with the policies of the NAACP and consistent with the resolution as passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Johnson. Excellent, excellent. Well, at this time, I present to you Dr. Carol Johnson. Okay. I have told the presenters, each presenter is to have 8 to 10 minutes, and then the task force can ask questions at that time.
Let me begin by thanking Gloria Sweetlove. I'm from Brownsville, so I feel especially valued to be here with people from my hometown, and the NAACP for coming here from around the nation, inviting me to speak at this convening. I really do hope that this is the beginning of an ongoing dialogue in our community where we collectively search and find answers that will propel our community and this nation on a journey to educate all students in this community. Today, I'm pleased to be back in Memphis, and I reflect on a few lessons learned as I have served in public education in Minneapolis, Memphis, and in Boston for over 3 decades. I have no doubt that some in this audience are more familiar with our history and the context in Memphis in particular, so I want to frame my remarks in the context not just of Memphis, but our most vulnerable children and what will be necessary to educate them well. So sorry. Yes, okay, I'll slow down. So sorry. I'm going too fast for the recorder. I'll slow down. So I want to frame my remarks in the context not just of Memphis, but our most vulnerable students and what will be necessary to educate them well wherever they attend school, whatever choices their parents make for them, and for whatever family backgrounds they come from. I've learned from both successes and mistakes that I have made, and every day I'm fortunate to discover new insights and to see more effective examples of excellence delivered to our children. So indeed, I am hopeful. I don't need to tell you that in 1954 in Brown v. Board of Education, the United States Supreme Court ruled that segregation was unconstitutional. And for the last 60-plus years, educators, researchers, policymakers, concerned citizens, parents, and some community activists, including local and national philanthropists, have been in search for the one silver bullet that will achieve excellence for all. We have had no shortage of solutions, and we have blamed everyone. We have blamed parents and students, teachers' unions, the superintendent and the school boards, mayoral leadership and the bureaucracy, and on occasion, we've used our political leverage to shift decision-making from top to bottom and back again, and unseated elected officials, replaced superintendents, and brought the latest textbook and technology to work miracles. Our strategies have been more structural than instructional, more about testing than quality teaching, more about desegregation than integration, more about evaluation of teachers than helping teachers develop the tools for development and support. We have ended social promotion, retained students repeatedly, and used turnaround strategies promoting choice, autonomy. We've offered merit pay, organized parents to advocate, and expanded technology access. We have created magnet schools, small high schools, alternative schools, charter schools, and expanded pre-K and after-school tutoring. Let me be clear. I do not mention any of these efforts in a disparaging way. I was part of many of them. Rather, I suggest that too often they have operated as a singular solution, a standalone effort, the one magic bullet that will close all achievement gaps. As successful as some of these efforts have and continue to be, the problems in public education cannot be solved if only some, not all of our children are successful. The problems cannot be addressed without identifying and using what we know works, collectively and collaborating together, and relentlessly focusing on all, not just some of our children. We have over 6,000 charters in the United States, in 42 states and the District of Columbia, serving some 3 million students. As of 2015-16, they represented 7% of the student population. That means that 93% of the population is still being educated in other schools. But there has been a 6-fold increase over the last 15 years. The first charter school was opened in 1991 in St. Paul, Minnesota, Bluffview, Montessori. Minnesota has over 150 charters serving 35,000 students. One cautionary note that I might add is I've worked and partnered with great charter schools and with schools that are less effective. I do think that there is some vigilance that we all must watch for when I watch in Minnesota and see that some of the more recent charter schools opening are German immersion, Hmong Academy, Chinese immersion, some that are specifically racially specific and isolated schools. A central question for us to consider at this moment in time is how the nature of educating all of our students has changed. We cannot ignore the persistent achievement gaps that stand as barriers to our moving forward. How should we operate differently this time? What should we know about the progress that we've made to date? And how can we learn and share across schools all that we know? The original charter schools were set up to help all of us learn. In a study of school improvement by the Consortium on Chicago School Research, they looked at hundreds of successful schools, and they included a 5-key framework for what is successful. First, principals and instructional leadership, teachers' professional capacity, a climate of high expectations and school safety, family and community involvement, the notion that schools cannot be successful alone, and finally, schools that are academically, intellectually challenged. So, quality teachers, instructional leaders, principals, high expectations in school safety, family and community involvement, and academically and intellectually rigorous classrooms. These probably sound like no-brainer to most of you, but putting all these elements in place, investing early, ensuring that there is an equitable distribution of resources, this is really hard work. Perhaps most importantly, their findings concluded this, that communities with high levels of social capital and low numbers of needy kids who live in poverty could get better results even if all of those things were not in place. Okay? So the communities that had higher levels of social capital, low numbers of needy kids, didn't have to have all of those 5 elements in place. But for our schools and neighborhoods with low social capital and larger numbers of needy, poor kids, concentrations of poverty, these essential supports must not just be in place, they must be exceptionally robust to result in the improvement for student success. They must be robust. For my comments today, I want to focus on 3 key drivers that I believe require immediate and sustained attention. Human capital, the people who teach and work with our children, the systems and structures we have put in place to sort, select, and in some cases, isolate and segregate learners by race, income, language, or background, and finally, more attention to the how, not just to the what. Teachers and teaching quality is the most important variable in improved student learning. We know that academic preparation, mindset, and expectations are key. But second only to teaching is school leadership. School leadership represents 25% of the student performance variable. Teachers say this, that they choose to stay at a school based on the school principal. Teachers say that they will stay in a school in a difficult setting based on the school principal. There's an old adage, and it says this, people don't leave companies, they leave managers. Our job is to recruit talent, develop and acknowledge talent toward a goal of retention. An article in the American Educator just this fall said, teachers' effectiveness increases more rapidly when they are well prepared up front, carefully selected, teach in supportive and collegial work environments, and receive intensive mentoring and helpful supervision and evaluation. Teacher effectiveness improves more rapidly when teachers accumulate experience in the same grade level, subject, and district. We struggle with the equitable distribution of more experienced teachers, and the research says that we should avoid the concentration of novice teachers in our highest need schools.
That's right.
The second thing is structures and systems. When you think about hospitals, while we work to desegregate our schools, we continue to perpetuate unequal access to quality. Systems can have unequal distribution of resources, limit students' access and opportunity to the best teachers, and lock in a perpetual system of inequality, where some have access and others do not. The research shows that Black third graders are half as likely as white third graders to be included or identified in the gifted and talented programs in our schools across the nation. Black and Latino students, as you've already heard, are underrepresented in advanced placement and international baccalaureate classes and overrepresented in special education services and disciplinary and behavior data. These structures and systems that are in place have a way of perpetuating inequality without careful monitoring and publicly displaying the discipline data. In Boston, where over 40% of students lived in households where English was not the first language, fewer than 5% of our ELL enrollment were represented in our charter schools. America's way of doing business has been competition. It is antithetical to our preference for a system that prefers winners and losers, to use the word all. It is a mindset that perpetuates both outside and inside the schoolhouse doors. Not all of our